All right, guys, Michelle back with one more spooky Reddit read to take us into the weekend here. This is called Got Lost in the Woods for 8+ hours as a little girl and saw something unexplainable. I grew up in a densely forested rural area in central Virginia, and like most kids my age, 10 at this time, I spent a lot of time playing in the woods and around them. My best friend and I had found a creek one day while exploring different deer trails through the woods. The creek we happened on was a very rare find and a perfect spot for us to play. It was wide and deep enough to swim around, and it had a nice, soft, mossy bank on either side to rest on after we tired ourselves. The water was cool and clear, no copperheads and no mosquitoes because the water was constantly running. We were psyched. After a few hours of swimming, we had to walk back home for lunch, but we made plans to pack lunch the next day so we could have a picnic on the creek banks and spend the whole day there. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? The next morning, we set out for the woods at around 1 p.m., planning to have the picnic first and swim after. We entered the same spot we had the previous day and followed what we thought was the same deer trail. It was not. At the point where we should have found the creek, we walked into a small clearing that was covered in huge, thick ferns. We had definitely never walked this path before. So, being both hungry and tired of walking, we decided to eat in the clearing. We laughed and played around for a while, spitting watermelon seeds at each other from our lunch. It was an absolute blast, and we were both in a wonderful, giddy mood. That all changed, however, as soon as we packed up and set back out to find the creek. As we walked on, the woods started to feel darker and colder. We got skittish, and I noticed my friend kept whipping her head around to look behind us. After about a half hour of walking, we came up on what looked like an entire overgrown bathroom, sink, toilet, bathtub, all sitting arranged together and covered in ivy. It's pretty common to find weird stuff like this in the middle of the woods, so we just walked on it and made jokes to lighten the mood, calling it Bigfoot's bathroom. After another hour of walking and not seeing anything we recognized, we started to panic. Instead of trying to reach the creek, we were now just trying to find our way back home, or out of the woods at least. I told her we should follow the sun and eventually we would come up on a road, someone's property, where we could find help. She insisted on another way and began yelling at me out of fear, and I started yelling back. Let's be honest, little girl bossiness. I told her that if she was so right, she could just go her way and we could see who got out first. So we split up. Now as an adult, I fully acknowledge I was being stubborn and I was a brat. And I was also an idiot. Worst possible thing we could have done. Not 10 minutes after splitting up, I began to hear someone walking, maybe 100 feet behind me. Thinking it was my friend deciding to go my way after all, I slow down so she can catch up to me. Instead, whatever it was matched my pace. I slow down, it slows down. I stop, it stops. This went on for hours. The whole time I was going back and forth on whether or not it was in my head or there was really something following me. I picked up a big stick. I swung it a few times to make sure it was sturdy if I had to hit someone with it, and I trucked on. As it began to get dark, I came up on something that made my heart sink into my stomach. It was Bigfoot's bathroom. We had just walked a huge circle for hours. Despite being 100% sure I was following the setting sun west the entire time, confused and frustrated, I sat down on a log and just screamed my little heart out while smacking my whoop-ass stick repeatedly into the ground. As I tried to collect myself, I heard the footsteps again walking up on me from behind. I called out my friend's name as loud as I could, no answer. Then after a short pause, the steps began to run towards me. I jumped up and booked it as fast as I could in the opposite direction. Now is the truly horrifying part, which I typically omit while telling people this story. As I was sprinting through the darkening woods, I began to hear what I thought were church bells. I looked up to see the darkest, deepest cloud I have ever seen in my life. In the middle of it was so black, it looked like something. It was like looking into the night sky, and the dark gray around it seemed to be swirling. It gave me a horrible feeling to look at, almost like nausea you get when you're looking through binoculars too long. What sickened me further is that I realized the sound of the bells was coming through the hole in the cloud. They were deafeningly loud. I mean, really booming out of this thing. When I realized this, I stopped dead in my tracks. I felt a sense of absolute and overwhelming dread that had gone unmatched in my 24 years on this planet. Something in my head began screaming that if I did not run away from whatever the hell that cloud was, no one would ever see me again and I would be gone. I didn't want to run towards the thing chasing me either, though, so I made a sharp right and took off away from both. It was now completely dark, and I was running blind through the woods, smacking through branches, wheezing and tripping every few feet for what seemed like another hour, until I smacked into something low and flew over it, hitting the ground so hard all the air in my lungs was knocked out of me. As I lay there trying to recover, I realized I couldn't hear the bells anymore. Then my eyes adjusted more to the dark, and I realized what I had just made me go ass over teeth was an old fence. Grabbing hold of it, I prayed it would lead me to a farm, and sure enough, it did. I walked over a hill about a mile to the back of the farmhouse, explained what had happened, and the farmer graciously gave me a ride back home. I was covered head to toe in scrapes, oozing blood, and more exhausted than I had ever been in my life, but I was finally safe. It was past 9 p.m. when I finally walked through my front door. My family had gotten back shortly after we split and figured my friend had gotten back shortly after we split and figured I had as well. So hadn't told anybody I was lost, and my family just figured I was still out after dark, which was not uncommon for me. They were shocked when I walked through beat up and crying. Nobody had been looking for me at all. To this day, I wonder how long they would have waited to come find me if I hadn't been lucky enough to find the fence. And it would have been too late, possibly. All right, guys, what do you think? So she seems pretty clear on her memories of this, really, even though she was young, 10, I think she said, when she experienced it. I think being lost in the woods alone is just terrifying, when you realize you absolutely have no idea how to get out or where you're at, for a child especially. I mean, but the footsteps matching her pace, do you guys think that's paranormal? I think it could be. I mean, there are a lot of stories of the woods, you didn't hear that, right? Like Appalachia. So, not sure if it's that kind of a thing. The weird black cloud thing, obviously, unless she was like having some kind of a vision because she was dehydrated. And I mean, I feel like she would have known, like if it was possibly not real. So the fact that it scared her enough to just run away like that, like, I think she experienced something. The bells. What do the bells mean, Again, I feel like you're hearing bells and weird sounds in the woods. It's one of those, no, I don't. And you're just getting out of there. And what a nightmare to not even know the way back to get out of that situation. So, and to be coming out of that at dark nonetheless. So you're out there with no flashlight or preparedness to be out there at dark. So tell me what you guys think about this one in the comments. What do you think she experienced? I do believe it was probably something paranormal, quite honestly. I don't know what I believe she experienced on this one. I mean, this may fall into a cryptid territory. I'm not sure. Could be a spirit, I suppose. Do you think that the bells and the black cloud were the same thing as the footsteps? Because she kind of identifies them as two separate things she was running from. So, were they? Or were they just one thing, I don't know. Drop your comments below. Leave me some feedback. I love talking to you all in the comments about your thoughts on stuff. I love hearing it, that you like the stories. And please hit the repost button so others can see my stories as well. You guys are wonderful and have a great weekend.